Gerhard Bloom, looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. So yes, leftists under this post-colonial nonsense, they condemn Israel as a white, Western colonial enterprise. And so they will excuse the rape, the torture, the slaughter, and kidnapping of innocent civilians as an act of emancipation. They are also decolonizing the educational system, the museum, the literary canon, etc., right? The greatest works of Western history, and dare I say, in world history, are being cast aside in favor of the works of marginal and inconsequential people of color. And let me be on the record as saying, there have been some great modern authors and artists and figures of notoriety in the 20th century and the 21st century, right? But they were largely in the Western world, for obvious reasons, neglected and not provided the opportunity to express themselves. Yes, under Jim Crow and slavery. So it's no accident that the Western tradition is formed by largely white males, right? And women were also excluded up until relatively recently. Certainly before the 20th century, you've got Charlotte Bronte and what's her name, wrote Jane Eyre, a woman's novel, but it is great literature if you like that sort of thing, which I don't, right? But it is considered great literature and part of the canon. So yes, greatest works of Western history cast aside. There is a reason why. You go to Asia and they will have symphony orchestras playing, yes, Beethoven. They're not inviting, and studying African tribal music. Unless you've got an ear for that sort of thing, it has no universal pretensions at all. There's a famous case of Harrison, Beatles guy, inviting Ravi Shankar, right? Great sitar player. Ravi Shankar's on stage and all of these deluded white folks, as Ravi Shankar is tuning up his sitar, start wildly applauding. Harrison, deeply embarrassed because these people knew absolutely nothing about sitar music or Ravi Shankar's artistry because they knew nothing of it, but they wanted to appear virtuous to the world, so clap like seals, right? So the great works of African literature, there weren't any before the 20th century, right? There just wasn't a literary tradition in Africa. So nonsense. And furthermore, the post-colonial narrative, the colonial narrative, it's a lie, right? Colonialism wasn't the brutal imposition people argue it was. And yes, there were some misdeeds. Why? Because the colonial administration tracked misdeeds. They investigated misdeeds. Very senior governors were replaced. Senior colonial officials were replaced and sanctioned, right? African tribes slaughtering tens of thousands, enslaving them. They weren't investigated. They weren't, subject to any oversight or sanction. This was the way business was done in Africa and throughout the world. And German colonialism, French colonialism, the Portuguese, all of them. People flooded into the areas under colonial rule because they got stability, they got peace, they got security. And after Britain banned the global slave trade, they didn't have to worry about getting hunted up to use in the black slave market, right? That was continuing, though flooded in. And on any objective metric, colonialism was an absolute benefit to the subject populations. Leftists with this post-colonial white oppression narrative, they caused them to support the brutal oppression of Hamas. Colonialism improved the lives of millions of people. Reductions in poverty, increased food production, clean water, the rule of law, massive reduction in violence, crime, improved healthcare, education, etc., etc. And post-colonialism was an absolute catastrophe, led to orgies of violence, collapsing economies, endemic corruption, poverty, and the destruction of educational institutions. And the guilty white man, no. Anyways, post-colonialism, it's a poisonous lie, and students waving the banner of Palestinians because they think it's part of this post-colonial enterprise, they're wrong on all fronts. Absolutely, they couldn't be more deluded. Anyways, thank you so much for your time and attention. Do hope you'll check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. It's available on Amazon. I promise you, it's important. Not because I wrote it because the issues could not be more important. And please do drop a thumbs up. It gratifies my fragile male ego. And if you're watching these videos on TikTok, if you find my post disappeared or silenced, check me out on YouTube. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Bye-bye now.